Hi, this is DJ Skimmets from Twin Tier Sports, and right now we're with Rick Gooshaw, the cross-country coach of Thomas Edison High School in Elmira Heights. Thanks for being with me, Rick.
You're welcome.
To start off, tell us a little bit about the sport for somebody that's not familiar with cross-country. What is cross-country all about?
Cross country is basically for the varsity level is usually about a 3.1 mile run, but it's usually done on trails through the woods. Um, it's sometimes open space, sometimes on tight trails, and basically the objective is, unlike most sports where you want to get the highest score possible, with cross country you want to get the lowest score possible. And by doing that, what I mean is like your first place finisher would get 1 point, second place finisher 2 points, and your top 5 finishers for your team, you take their accumulated points and add them together, and that is your team score. And the objective again is to get the lowest score possible.
All right, that's very enlightening. I didn't know it was a team sport. Personally, I thought it was an individual, and it was just based on time. So that's a very important aspect for our viewers to understand that it is a team sport. So looking at it from a team sport, with different meets, do you have different runners maybe participate? Is there strategy involved?
Well, with your dual meets, all of your runners run varsity. It's on your invitationals and your league meets is when you have to choose your top 7 runners, because you, like I said, your top 5 are your team score, but your 6th place runner is your tiebreaker. If you have a tie after the 5 runners, you go to your 6th runner to break the tie, and anyone outside of that 7 usually ends up running a JV race. Sometimes they'll combine the races together and run all of your kids at one time, and then afterwards they'll break down the score between varsity and JV. Other times they run separate races. Depends on the size of the meet.
Okay, so tell me, how does one begin their cross-country career, or how do they get involved with something like this? What type of person would get involved in cross-country?
Actually, we get all types. A lot of our kids are big into running, but we get also a lot of kids that, like wrestlers, for example. A lot of wrestlers will join cross country to get in shape and ready for the wrestling season, and that's all right. We welcome everybody.
So it does have a broad appeal, not just to maybe a track person or a marathoner or whatever that wants a different look at things, like you said, because they do travel through courses and it's out in the open, and that's pretty interesting. What do you do differently than maybe some other coaches? What is your approach to helping the cross-country runner become a better runner?
I'm a big believer in leading by example. I do every workout with my kids. Everything they do, I do, and I hope that pushes them to push themselves. Being an older person, so to speak. A lot of the kids will look and say, "Well, if he can do it, I can do it." And that's always been my biggest approach, is to show them that if I can do it, anybody can.
So, other than the shoes, I don't really see any other special equipment. So it's not one of those expensive sports, like hockey. I've heard time and time again, it's very expensive to outfit your player for hockey, because you've got to buy them their equipment that fits. So it's just a good pair of running shoes and a good attitude.
Well, you want a good pair of running shoes, or trainers, as we call them, for practice. But for the meets, we go with what we call racers, which are on the order of track spikes, but they've got a little bit of more of a cushion in the heel than your sprinter spikes for track would have. The spikes would give you more traction in the soft terrain.
All right, so you bring up another point I'd like to cover. How do you train? Do you just do the course all the time? I mean, or do you do sprints? Do you do weight room? What's a training regimen like for a cross country runner?
Well, we have different trainings. Some days we'll go out on the road and run distance, 4, 5, 6 miles, depending on the individual. Some of our younger kids, like the freshmen just coming in, may not be able to do 6, 7 miles yet. So we'll send them out on the course, but we'll have them come back sooner. A little shorter run, maybe 4 miles. Where with my top runners like Samantha, we might do as much as 7 miles. Some days it'll be flat runs through the city. Other days we go up into the hills and run the hills. And then there's days where we do interval workouts on the track, or we'll go to an open field and do interval type work, tempo work, things like that. Your interval works might be a series of 200s, 400s, 800s, even thousands. Your tempo runs would be an easy run, and then so many minutes of hard, then easy, hard again.
I would imagine that nutrition plays an important role in making a good cross country runner. Do you run through that with your athletes and instruct them on the nutrition that they need, whether it be on a race day or just any other day?
Well, one thing I really push hard is at the beginning of the season when we have our parent-coach meeting and my meeting with the kids first day of practice is to eat healthy. I tell them to stay away from soda as much as possible. Energy drinks are out of the question. And when first day of practice, I tell them until cross country is over, you are not to touch any energy drinks. Energy drinks are highly caffeinated. They raise your heart rate, and then you go out on the practice field and running intervals, and you're raising your heart rate on top of that. It's a dangerous combination. I really impress on them that they really need to stay away from the energy drinks. They should stay away from them all the time, but especially during cross country because we do work so hard. And then one thing we do here at Edison is the night before every meet, one of the parents will host a pasta dinner to carve up the night before a race. So, and we have really good parents here in the Heights. You have a sign-up sheet, and at the parent coaches meeting, and it's usually filled by the end of the meeting with people that want to host the dinner.
So you bring up another point I'd like to cover. Parents, I know that parents play a very important role in today's student athlete, and it seems as though that you get some great support from your parents.
Yes, we do. Being in the IAC, we do travel a lot. Sometimes we travel pretty good distances, up to an hour and a half away. And it's surprising how many parents will travel, even on our dual meets during the week on Tuesday nights, as well as on the weekends. Will travel all that distance, take time off of work to travel and cheer on the kids. Like, for instance, when we go to McQuaid up in Rochester, that's quite a haul, and parents every year are there to cheer them on. And it's something you don't see with other sports is, like with football or basketball, when you go to them as a spectator, you're cheering for your team and your team only. And sometimes they get a little feisty, if you will, toward the other team. When you go to cross-country meets, it's totally different. Everybody cheers for everybody. It doesn't matter if it's your team, the other team. They're on the sidelines, and they're cheering every kid that goes by. And the amazing thing is that the last place kid usually gets a bigger cheer than the first place kid.
That's great. Being a referee of a few sports, I think I'd like to referee. Can we referee cross country? I had no idea. So that's a very enlightening point that the spectators and the parents are cheering everybody on, because they're doing such a tough thing. It's an individual sport, but like you said earlier on, that there is a team score. Injuries, do injuries come up in the season?
Yeah, actually, this year we had a lot of injuries this year. It was a very injury-plagued season, especially with my boys. I had a few girls that went through some rough times, but a lot of my boys had a lot of injuries. Like you know, Achilles problems, ankles, knee bothering them.
Would that be because of the course and the terrain changes? That I mean, like a twisted knee or a twisted ankle, or is it just a freak accident?
Well, a lot of times it's especially with teenage boys, especially in running sports, they'll get what's called Osgood-Schlatter's disease. It's just something that teenage boys are prone to more so than the girls. And that causes a lot of knee problems. Sometimes it's their running technique. Some kids have a technique where their feet cross over instead of going straight ahead. And every time you take a step, it's like 6 times your body weight when you're running. And if you're not landing perfectly straight, it can throw your balance off and cause knee problems as well. I try to work on the kids to keep those legs moving straight forward. But sometimes, old habits are hard to break, and they get little knee problems. Sometimes you get shin splints are really tough, especially with hilly courses, with the downhills especially. Our hill workouts, sometimes shin splints are a real problem. They're just little things like that.
Okay. Um, what would be the number one thing that you try to instill in all your runners?
My biggest goal is to instill on my kids a lifelong love of physical fitness, whether it be running, biking, swimming, whatever. Um, I like to see them go on and continue to run even after they're out of school and done with their athletic careers. It's something you can do the rest of your life, and it just promotes a healthy living.
Well, I want to thank you very much for spending a few minutes with me, and I hope that we've brought to light a little bit about the sport cross country, so people will understand a little bit more about what it's about and what people go through. I certainly look forward to talking to you again. I hope we can do that in the future, and best of luck next season.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.